Hi, I'm Sharon Smith, and this is my Mod 12 case study. So, the case study took place at St. Regis School. St. Regis School is a K through 8 school that's in a very rural school district. The events began in the school library where the librarian made a decision. The school collected funding for computers and computer software. Using forms, teachers helped decide what programs were best for students. 4 programs for 20 computer lab devices were purchased. Several teachers asked for classroom copies of the programs. The librarian ordered blank CDs and made copies of 4 programs for every teacher in the building. New teacher, Miss Brandon, did not accept the copied programs because they violated copyright. She reported the situation to the principal, and he addressed the issue with the librarian. She was told to collect all copies and told not to make any more copies. Many people seemed to be aware of the copies, including parents. So people who were directly involved were Principal Simple, who worked to correct the situation the next day, Miss Brandon, who reported the situation to Mr. Simple at the end of the first day, Miss Williams, who asked for classroom copies initially, Miss Lynn, the librarian who made all the copies, and the PTA president, Miss Evans, who helped make copies. Every teacher who accepted a copy of the programs and the program developers who do not know of the copyright violation at this time were all involved. Legally, the school fairly purchased enough programs for all 20 of the computer lab computers. Each computer received 4 programs. There are roughly 16 teacher classrooms in the building. If the librarian copied 4 programs for each teacher, she violated copyright 64 times. According to Copyright in Digital Files, you are not permitted under Section 117 to make a backup copy of other materials on a computer's hard drive, such as other copyrighted works that have been downloaded. Miss Lynn, the librarian, was told by the new teacher that making copies was a copyright violation. To correct her action, she could have collected and destroyed the copies that she made. However, she chose not to. She even tried to justify her actions by saying, "Do you really think anyone will know or care about a few copies for classrooms at St. Regis? We're 25 miles from the closest city." This shows that she was willing to steal when she thought no one would find out. This behavior is unethical. Different people that were harmed in this event were the program developers who did not know of the copyright violation are still being harmed. All teachers who accepted the copied programs are now involved in copyright violations, therefore they are harmed. PTA president who helped make copies is also now involved in a copyright violation. All 420 children at the school could be affected by the financial burden of a copyright lawsuit. So they're harmed. And the school principal who is responsible for all school operations and budgeting could face a lawsuit too, and possibly district consequences. So in short, because the librarian violated copyright and copied software programs and distributed them, the principal of the school must correct this situation by removing the copies from the school and informing all involved parties of legal implications and school policies. So, what we know and what we don't know. We know that there are roughly 16 teacher classrooms in the building. When the librarian copied 4 programs for each teacher, she violated copyright 64 times. There are 420 students in the school who all had equal access to computer time and new software programs. The principal was unaware of the situation until Miss Brandon came forward. Lastly, rural schools depend on additional funding from the community. Things we do not know. Readers do not know the demographic of the students. Also, in this case study, we're not told how the principal communicates policies and laws with stakeholders after this event. We are also not made aware of how he communicates policies and laws before this event. We do not know what district Miss Brandon came from. Did she transfer in? So on this slide, I thought about stakeholders, and I tried to think of them from order of priority. So All teachers who accepted the copied programs are now involved in copyright violations. All the other teachers in the building are stakeholders. Many of them received copies and could be indicated in a lawsuit. Teachers will also need to be informed, but were not informed in the case study. The librarian who bought blank discs and copied 64 discs and distributed them would be indicated in a lawsuit as well. She has been informed of her error and has been told to collect all copies of the program according to the case study. The PTA president who helps make copies is now involved in a copyright violation. Parents in the PTA will also need to be informed because some of them, such as the PTA president, Miss Evans, is aware of the copies and even helped in producing them. She could be indicated in a lawsuit. All 420 children at the school could be affected by the financial burden of a copyright lawsuit. According to Carpenters, J. HISD agreed this month to settle Dinah Studies' lawsuit of $7.8 million. This shows that schools can incur steep financial consequences that will affect students. The school principal, who is responsible for all school operations and budgeting, could face lawsuits and possibly district consequences. Again, I use the same data that we've gone through in our class study that HISD agreed this month to settle Dinah Studies' lawsuit for $7.8 million. This shows that schools can incur steep financial consequences. The program developers who do not know of the copyright violation are the ones being harmed as well. As long as all copies are removed and disposed of immediately, the developers do not need to be informed right away. So I tried to identify different options and possible consequences of those options. So option 1, I thought I could choose not to make any decisions at all as a principal and take no action. Option 2, choose to call the publisher software developer and report the violation committed by the librarian, PTA president, and all the teachers who accepted copies of the copied software. Option 3, choose to inform the librarian of the violations. Have her collect all the copies of the copied software and destroy them, and never mention the situation again. Or option 4, choose to inform the librarian of the violation. Have her collect all the copies of the copied software and destroy them, and move to notify all stakeholders, such as like the PTA and other staff members. If I chose option number 1, choose to make no decisions and take no action, maybe nothing will happen and the school will have 64 free computer programs. However, the school could also be reported and have to pay for all 64 programs and be embarrassed, and the principal could most likely lose his job in this type of situation. Option 2. It was choose to call the publisher, software developer, and report the violations committed by the librarian, PTA president, and all the teachers who accepted copies of the copied software. The publisher or developer would take pity, possibly, and allow the school to simply dispose of the program, best case scenario. However, there also could be a lawsuit, and the school would have to pay for 64 programs. Teachers would quit or lose their jobs, and PTA would disband or not assist schools with these things in the future because it would maybe create a distrustful climate. Option 3, choose to inform the librarian of the violations. Have her collect all the copies of the copied software and destroy them, and never mention the situation again. If I chose this route, maybe nothing would happen and people would forget about the copied programs. However, parents and teachers were aware of the copies, so maybe parents and teachers would talk about how students were deprived of software for no reason, especially if they were not informed as to why they had to get rid of the copied computer programs. Option 4, choose to inform the librarian of the violations, have her collect all copies of the copied software and destroy them, but also move to notify all stakeholders, such as like the PTA and the staff. Maybe a positive would be that all people would be more informed and could help prevent this type of thing from happening in the future. The copies will no longer be an issue at the school. Maybe a con would be that all people will know about the violation that occurred, but that could also be a positive. I feel like the best option for stakeholders, all stakeholders involved, would be option number 4. Choose to inform the librarian of the violation. Have her collect all the copies of the copied software and destroy them. Move to notify all stakeholders, PTA, and staff, for example. As the leader, this is what my plan of action would look like. First, I would meet with the librarian, inform her of laws that were violated, and have her correct the situation by collecting and destroying all copies made. Second, I would meet with the PTA president that helped make the copies, inform her of laws that were violated and how they have been corrected. Explain that when it comes to equity, the school was already meeting the needs of students. All teachers took part in choosing the software programs purchased by the school. A schedule was developed so that each teacher had scheduled times in the computer lab. Students were given equal access to the computer programs as well. And teachers were able to provide students with software programs with the instructional objectives of as many grades and levels and subjects as possible. And then I would discuss how the school would need to buy additional copies for classrooms if it was decided. Lastly, provide her with an informative handout covering copyright and free use laws and policies that impact the school. This way she could share them with other parents and teachers that were at PTA. Third, distribute an informative handout covering copyright and free use laws that impact the school to all teachers, because teachers were also involved in this event. At the next staff meeting, I would also present a staff development review on copyright and free use laws and policies that impact the school. Fourth, develop a response to the publisher/software developer just in case they approach the school with concerns. Inform them that there was a violation, but that it was addressed immediately and all copies were collected and destroyed. Explain the action plan that was taken. So lastly, I really tried to think about how to analyze laws, policies, and apply them consistently, fairly, equitably, and ethically within a school, and how to monitor and ensure adherence to laws, rights, policies, and regulations to promote students' adult success and well-being. So after the principal was informed of the copyright violation, he approached the librarian and corrected the situation by informing her of her error in judgment and by directing her to stop what she was doing. The text says, "You'll have to collect all copies and stop making others. Removing these copies from circulation is the ethical choice to make because otherwise the school would be stealing. It does not decrease equity for students at the school by removing the programs. Students will still have equitable access to all of the programs. Removing the copied software from classrooms is also fair because it was not supposed to be copied anyways. Monitoring adherence to laws and policies can be done through check-ins with staff and other school leaders." So for my reflection, the question was, basically, how would this assignment help me as a future leader? This class has been very informative. I learned new information about laws, policies, and regulations that have been relevant to me right now and as a future leader. Doing this case study as the final assignment meant that I would need to think back into early learning experiences and apply them as if I were Mr. Simple. I do feel like I was able to apply EDL 850 knowledge to resolve an authentic school problem like copyright and free use. School leaders need to be up to date on laws, regulations, and policies, and when they see violations, they need to know how to take steps and develop plans to meet the needs and well-being of their students and their staff. This was a wonderful class, and thank you so much for everything.